What's going on, guys? Jimmy here with J. Kaiser Custom MX. So this is going to be part two of the, I guess you'd say the teardown and the rebuild of the 1993 KX125. Still in process here, so trying to decide what I want to do, if everything's good inside the engine and I want to move forward, and then what kind of rebuild I want to do here. So typically, I would take about an hour or so, kill myself back into the parts bin. Take about an hour or so to break everything down, tear the bike completely apart, and then assess each part that way. But in this case, I did something a little different. I tore it down only to frame, engine, front and rear wheel, suspension. That way I could kind of see it still a little bit together, be able to assess how it looks at this point, kind of look down in it, things like that, and also so you guys could kind of see what I'm working with too. So let's take a look at what I've got and we'll talk through it. Let's see. All right, there she is, folks. The 1993 KX125. Pretty much all intact when I got it. It was basically all there, and that is a plus when everything is there. So broke it down to a point where you see it right now, and still thinking hard on it. So let's go. First of all, let's take a look at the engine here. Absolutely filthy. I mean, filthy. This is filth. That's all it is. I don't know if this thing's ever been cleaned. And I even wonder how much of it's been apart. This is why. Those are the bolts for the radiator. Both sides look exactly the same. Here's the other side. And still pretty much new where they've been threaded inside. So I don't think these radiators have ever been removed. That's just a good guess because I think that's stock or OEM part. The rest of it, the rest of this stuff, look at this. It's just filthy as can be. Just filth. I could wipe that off like a new frame. Forks are decent looking. I don't know if there's any pitting in these lower fork tubes or not. It's likely. I'll have to check that out. And the radiators, as I pulled those off, the one on the right, I actually went ahead and straightened the one on the right while it's still on the bike. The one on the left needs a little help, but I ain't hating them. They're still pretty good shape, and they were full of fluid, so they weren't leaking at all. So that's a good sign. So I may go ahead and try to straighten that one on the left, straighten some of the fins, see what we look like, go from there. On this side, we're looking at even more filth. I mean, just a nasty mess. The power valve cover on these bikes up through the early 90s and 94, 5, 6, they all looked very similar to this power valve cover and usually broken or busted up. That boot underneath is not warped. It's still in the groove of the plastic cover. So that looks good. It's full of grease and oil and grime and junk. I'm assuming from a unsealed exhaust, but I don't know. Don't know. The suspension is shot, and I don't even want to get on. I didn't even want to get on it when I found out that the lower bearing down here in the shock was gone, so it's just kind of bouncing around. So I hope the linkage is okay. But buddy, these folks said let's paint it. Didn't make a dang what was in the way. Brakes, no problem. Brake line, no problem. And I'm gonna tell you what, this frame from here to here has been painted 47 times. I mean, there's a thick coat. There's 10 pounds of paint on this thing. Rough. But you know what? It's all there. The only other thing, a little concerning, but not a big deal, where the coil bolts to the frame, that little tab is loose, so that weld is broken. And then one other spot you may have noticed a minute ago when I was over here with the camera, that tab right here is the lower radiator tab, which would bolt right there. So it's broken off. Still not a big deal. What is a big deal is rust. So we don't want to run into a whole lot of that, and there's some here, but it may be mostly surface, but we want to make sure of that. So frame rails, I felt them, they feel really good, solid. I don't feel any dents or dings or busted up places, but the only way to really tell that is flip it over and take a look. So that'll be coming up next. Gosh, I'm excited to get into this engine. I really can't wait to see what it looks like in there. Let's turn this around and talk about it. Something tells me that for the first time ever, I'm about to get into an engine that hadn't been broken to like 50,000 times. So we'll see what we look like in there. But I just gave it a kick. Or 2 or 3 when I first got it, just to see what it sounded like. I could immediately tell that the bearings, the main bearings, were no good at all. So, you know, we want to see what that bottom end looks like. So, you know, it's a good base. I think it's a great way to get started, or a great starter for a good project. Now, what to do? Do I want to go full bore restoration on it? I tend to like to do that, and it's kind of the right thing to do. So probably. Or do I go, do I just replace bearings, clean it up, powder coat the frame, do all the things good, get it nice and clean without spending $1 million on the thing, and make a really nice vintage racer out of it? That's a great idea too. Don't know, maybe even go that route. Or do we make a replica bike or a tribute bike, whichever. And you dang sure know I love doing that. So those are my choices on what to do. The other choice would have been that I find just so many bad parts that I just rip the Band-Aid off and hit the timeout and part it out. And sometimes that happens. I don't think we're there on this one. I think this one's got too many good qualities to part it out. I think we can, actually I do believe I can restore a lot of the OEM parts that are on it. And it's still got, some of its most of its older parts. So I think the radiators are good. The hoses I won't keep, of course. The plastic I won't keep, of course. The seat cover is going to have to be replaced, and most likely the seat foam, I'm sure of that. Things like that. But you know what? Many of the other parts are still looking good. So we'll see what happens. So the next video that I'll do, so I guess I'll do a lot of parts. This is part 2, so I'll probably be up to like part 50 the way this is going. Will be once the engine's out of the frame's completely free, the swing arm and the forks, that I have examined the frame and what I'm doing at that point. Most likely going to the welding shop and then straight to the powder coater. For the Kawasaki green, I'll go ahead and pull the shock spring off. I always send those at the same time. The only thing I want to pay attention to on this bike is what condition the foot peg mounts are in. So they mount on that frame, and a lot after 30 whatever years, they start to basically spread out and pry those things apart. They're just flopping around in there. So I want to pay attention to that and go ahead and address that before it goes to the powder coater. So I believe they'll probably spread out. They're probably just going to need to come back in. Pegs, whether or not I use the stock pegs or go with an aftermarket or something a little different. Normally, I go with something just a little different depending on the build, though. It completely depends on the build. So we'll see about that, and that'll be what we're looking at next. So stay tuned, keep up with this build. We'll see what goes on, and if you have any questions or comments or suggestions, by all means, let me know. I'd love to hear what you think, and we'll build this thing together. Talk to you soon.